What's going on, guys? Reisshub back with the first episode of the Reisshub Recap, where in this series we're going to be recapping everything from the previous week of competitive Fortnite for EU specifically. Let's just dive straight into the good stuff. So let's get on to the updates and news. What were the updates last week? Nothing. Cool, let's move on to the news. So there were 3 different blog posts that we had as well, so a lot of action to cover in 1 week. So the first one of these just was the FNCS rules clarification, which isn't super useful to a lot of people, but it does show really cool things like the dates that are all coming around here. A lot of the stuff we'd already knew from a previous one. But one of the most important things is actually just how the series points are laid out, and it basically showed specifically that the series points were pretty much heavily weighted towards actually getting into round 4 rather than being earlier than that. So outside of this, there wasn't anything hugely new from this, but it was cool. We finally got the actually full rules for this too. The next one was much more important, I must say, which was the rules clarification. Now, they kind of started to clarify a lot of interesting things like intentional disconnects and kind of the rules around that, illegal restarts, region locking, which basically meant that they're going to put this new bolded part in the rules to make it clear, because a lot of times there's a lot of clarification of, is this tournament region locked, is it not? This basically was a large paragraph of leaderboard adjustments, which basically summed up to say, it takes us a while to do leaderboards, chill out. These were the 2 biggest things that I want to actually be clear that now made sense. Key remapping is legal, so using any double movement bind on your keyboard mouse is legal. However, one thing that is not legal is using scroll reset kind of map on kind of your controller. So we need to know the most important clarification that they made here is the fact that if you use one button remap to another button, it's fine. If you use multiple buttons remap to one button, it's not okay. So that's basically a macro in comparison to just putting one key on another one. What you can use this for is if you're on controller, you can put a shotgun button on your controller. I'm not sure if it loses you aim assist or anything like that, but I know it's possible to do. So that's another thing you can do for controller. On keyboard mouse, you can use double movement. And the last part is just wagering. They basically said, don't wager. It's not allowed for us. We don't allow wagering. I've always had a problem against wagering personally myself, so I'm very, very happy to see them put like a stance on it in there too. And the final one is Aura and Trio scrims for EU only, which I'm extremely excited about. I think it will probably be very hit or miss. However, on Tuesday, so it'll be tomorrow, the day after uploading this video, they're going to be testing Open and Aura scrims, as they're calling them. So they're basically splitting them into 2 separate groups. So there'll be Aura scrims, so top 500 teams from last season's FNCS series board, series points, and then into Open. So anyone else from contenders up. I kind of wish it was champions, but it's contenders up. So basically, there'll be 3 sessions per week. And what'll happen is there'll be, I'm guessing it's just like a normal tournament. You'll load into it and you'll just play scrims for specific periods of the week, which is really, really exciting. I will be doing a full video playing this tomorrow night, so it'll be up on Wednesday, the day after, because I want to test it out, see what it's like. Top performing players from Open League will get promoted to Aura scrims the following week, and inactive or poor playing players from the Aura scrims will be delegated down below. So basically, if you don't play well in the top ones, you get shifted down to the below ones. If you play well in the opens, you move up. So hopefully the top level scrims will be good. Let's hope the top level players play it like they should for practice and not just W key ruin the games. I think the low level scrims will probably not be the best, but I'm really excited to find out tomorrow. It's something cool that Fortnite's implementing a new way to practice, so I'm very, very happy with this. And our org news from this week, one of the most important things we've seen actually is Wave has signed with Red Bull. And why is this so important? Well, it's because clearly showing Epic, showing that there's a longevity in the Fortnite competitive scene, is showing sponsors that it's worth investing in. So Red Bull signed up, so I'm sure a lot of other ones will, which will give orgs a little bit more money, which gives them a little bit more value to players as well. So other kind of organizations are getting sponsors and getting noticed right now as well, which is super, super cool. So I'm really, really happy to see them kind of be involved in this as well. And hopefully other big sponsors will follow suit as well. And we may see some other EU orgs grow even larger too. So let's move on to the, oh shit, hit my face guard. So let's move on to the Trio Cash Cup. Now, before the Trio Cash Cup started, there was a huge worry in EU because the creative servers were so laggy. As you could see by my builds, it said I was on like 50 ping, I think, for me personally, and a lot of other players struggled with this as well. Once they actually got into game, I noticed this exact same thing happening. You know, I had clips of, I think it was Benchfishy and Fixie just lagging all over the place in the Trio Cash Cup, and these servers were definitely worrying the week of FNCS. I don't think they ended up being as bad as they were on this day for the actual FNCS themselves, but the server conditions have been very, very poor over the last few weeks regardless, so I hope by finals this is something that we see really improved. But we saw a ton of players talking about dinosaurs, animals on the map causing all of this lag, etc. But we don't know what causes the lag at this point, but I just really hope that it gets fixed by the time FNCS finals rolls around. There's also another bug, a very, very interesting bug, which was players were loading into the Hype Cup rather than loading into the Cash Cup at the same time. And we saw people like Thomas Flick and Anas drop a 43 elimination game in the Hype Cup and then realized it was in the Hype Cup. So that was a real shame for them. And it turned out a load of people were doing this too. So Mr. Savage loaded into one as well, and so did Arab, who was playing on EU. So there was a lot of people who correctly clicked on the Trio Cash Cup, but for some reason they were just put into a Hype Night game. And this ended up cancelling all of the Hype Cups for future after this, just to ensure that there were no overlaps. Same with the bragging rights, because it overlaps with the kind of FNCS. So this is not a bug anymore. So a bit unfortunate to see those cups go, but at the same time, the Trio Cash Cups and FNCS are much more important, so it's not the end of the world. First place slot, we had Hen, Jannis, and Chapix, who ended up winning the Trio Cash Cup, and it came down to their final game. It was actually a really great Cash Cup to watch, because they were in contention with Hen, I think it was Andalex and AZ Squeeze at that point, who had like a really incredible match history. I think they had 3 wins in a row in game 4, 5, and 6. But unfortunately, Andalex's team ended up choking that final game. Hen and Jannis ended up going down in their final game relatively early, but Chapix just got enough points in that final game to clutch them into the first place. So it put them into 217 points, which was just ahead of what Andalex had. So it really was all the way down to that final game, and it made a really tense finish to the tournament. And are we surprised Hen, Jannis, and Chapix are coming back on top form after last season? I'm certainly not. But yeah, Andalex had a really big day there in that Cash Cup. In third, Cami, Seti, and Teak. And like, before we talk about FNCS, Cami and Seti and Teak have been really on fire so far. Their FNCS performance, not so much. However, like, Cami's won the Cash Cup, the solo Cash Cup in week 3, came 6th in week 2. They now placed 3rd in this Cash Cup. Seti won the Gref G Cup, and if that Dreamhack wasn't cancelled, I bet Teak would have won it as well. So they played really well and came 3rd all the way through. Their match history was just kind of insane, as always. They've been using the dub all the way through as their strategy, so huge performance from them as well. Benji Fishy ended up placing in 7th with Matzo and Amplify. They were 2nd pretty much throughout the entire day, but ended up kind of choking at the end, which was very unfortunate to see. And Tayson Forjar and Nate, team that most people would have predicted after the previous week's performance, they ended up winning the Cash Cup and the Cash Cup Extra. So we kind of thought a lot of people would think these would come back and win it again, but they placed 7th. But again, 7th, still a really, sorry, they placed 8th, but still a really huge performance. Like, placing 8th is absolutely no shy feat for these guys at all. Really big from them still. And they've been kind of struggling a little bit more because they've been really contested in Sweaty Sands, just because it's such a good spot. They won 2 Cash Cups from there. They've obviously a lot of players perform there from different seasons as well. So they've been struggling in these Cash Cups a little bit more because there's just so many players contesting them there. And you know, they started their first game with a 36 elimination win, no problem in those low elo lobbies. However, in games pretty much 2 to 6, they had a real struggle and then clutched it back at the end. So that kind of difficult middle games is just because they're being contested so often as well. Moving on to the next tournament of the week, which was the Cash Cup Extra. Some of the games weren't as stacked as the Cash Cups or any of the FNCS rounds either, but there were some really high quality games in there. I think it was just like a period in the first like hour where there were some really hit or miss ones, but overall, the games were really enjoyable. I actually really like the broadcasts that they have going for these. I think any tournament is made better by an official broadcast. I never know where to put my camera when I'm looking at leaderboards, so I'm going to be up in this corner. But for the Dreamhack Extra Cash Cup results, really this could have been an FNCS finals, and it kind of reflected it. I was going to say in no way at all. So in first we had iDrop, Kinzel, and Wakey. These guys really popped off, and actually they won their final game to actually win the entire tournament, which was up against Benji Fish's team as well. They were both in the same game. They're both vying for that first place slot. I actually think Thomas Flick and Anas were in there too, and Alex's team was in that last game too, which was all on the broadcast, so it was really cool. And I was actually watching from Benji Fishy's POV on his stream, and he ended up getting double harpooned from his floor, and as soon as I saw that, I knew it was iDrop, and then when the broadcast came to it, it was indeed. So I actually really liked the format for this tournament. Sorry, not the format. I don't like the format at all. I actually really like the tournament overall. It provided some real next level practice. It wasn't necessarily like a 33-player teams, like a final Cash Cup style from FNCS. It was 132, so they're kind of getting into different lobbies. But it was still interesting. It was good to watch. It was good kind of games to break down and analyze as well. Spoiler, these guys didn't actually perform that well during the FNCS. They didn't make it to the round 4. Decepto's team, Benji Fish's team, all the top 3 here, all didn't perform very well in that kind of final FNCS this week. Yeah, so this top 3, funnily enough, I said at the time this could be an FNCS finals leaderboard. A lot of these teams didn't actually perform when it came to the FNCS round 4, but we'll come to that in a second. Next tournament of the week is one that most people probably haven't actually watched too much of, which was the Solo Cash Cup. And I love the Solo Cash Cups, but this overlapped with the round 3 of the FNCS, so a lot of the top players aren't able to play it. So what actually happened in the leaderboards? What should be no surprise to anyone is the fact that the players who have already qualified for the finals from last season, so that was kind of Noah Riley, Vadil, Rezon's team, Thomas HD, Flick and Anas, and then Jannis, Chapix and Hen as well. So all these players could play because obviously they're not playing the qualifiers since they've already qualified for finals, and you can see the top leaderboard pretty much respect those players. So Noah Riley in first, Thomas HD in second, Chapix in fourth, Anas in sixth as well. As any of these other players up there? No. So huge performances from a lot of the players who have qualified already to the finals, really solidifying again, just not necessarily the most stacked tournament ever by any means, but just saying, you know what, these guys are still on form. We're not seeing them in FNCS, but they are performing. They're performing in Solo Cash Cups, they're performing in the Cash Cup Extras, and in the normal Cash Cup as well, so we can't be forgetting about these guys until the finals. So let's move on to our play of the week, and anyone who kept an eye on EU should have seen this team. It was Zalek, Kuri, and Trisuo, I don't know if I pronounced their names correctly, apologies if I haven't, I almost definitely butchered it, who in the FNCS round 1 ended up placing 1018th, I think it was, and they managed to do this with 0 eliminations, and they won 4 of their games, so they qualified for round 2 with 0 eliminations, basically doing a heal-off strategy. So we can see Boop NL on Twitter made a tweet of their looting path, as you should be able to see on screen right now, and basically the strategy that they used to do it, it was just stupid, but it was funny because it's not an exploit, it's just something that's implemented into the game. I know Levin was a big fan of these guys just doing this. They obviously didn't get any further than round 2, so I definitely thought this was going to be this week's play of the week. It brought a lot of attention to this team just doing something kind of silly. So let's get on to the tournament everyone really cares about this week, which was FNCS, the first qualifier, and I actually really loved it this week. I thought the new format changes were really good, brought some excitement to it. But the first thing that people really were talking about is Fortnite is dying. You love to see Fortnite is dying Twitter posts from people who have absolutely no clue what they're talking about. By the way, if you tweet something stupid like this, and I see you follow me on Twitter, I will block you. I will happily block anyone who just says something that makes no sense with no thought back up into it. But the reason people were tweeting this is because Taylor made a post, somebody's gun, my boy made a post around here which showed the amount of players playing this season's FNCS in comparison to last season's FNCS. Now, I actually went through and made a comparison post, so a little bit different on screen right now. You can see it where I did my own data, where I wanted to kind of compare how many teams are actually playing in comparison to the time it took to get to champions. So last season, there was 32,000 teams playing in the FNCS Qualifier 1, which was Champions League requirement. This season, there's 22,000 teams. However, you can see days to get to champions on the season 5 was significantly more, being 72 days, and there was 4 hype nights there as well. This time it was 25 days with 2 hype nights in it, so a lot shorter period. So let's be real, the average person struggles to get to champs a lot more than you'd think. If you look back to season 4 as well, there was console FNCS, there was also kind of a little bit more time, so it was 43 days with 2 hype nights, same, and there was only 1,000 more players playing then. And it wasn't just because everyone hated the season, so it's not just like the game is dying for competitive just because there's not as many people played. This will be the first part of who didn't make it to round 4. Let's talk about the ones that everyone wants to talk about first. Aqua CRR Vino, who came first in round 1, unfortunately did not make it into round 4. They had some really good games, they looked really strong, but in their final game didn't manage to clutch out enough points to get into the top 33 to make it to the final round. Mongrel Mitro Milan, the same thing. I watched some of their games from the Trio Cash Cup earlier in the week, and they looked pretty shambles. You know, they were really good fighters, but they looked like they had a lost game strategy. This week in FNCS, I really actually watched quite a few of their games. I was impressed. I saw a huge amount of increase in kind of overall game plan throughout their kind of game style, gameplay generally, so I was really impressed. And they just missed out on qualification for round 4 by I think about 10 slots, maybe 9, so I think they're around mid-40s in their placements, so didn't make 33 again. But I was really impressed with the way these guys played, just purely based on the fact that I've seen such a huge improvement over this week at all. So I really think if these guys keep practicing, keep improving the way they are, they're going to qualify. 3 other big teams that didn't make it into the finals was Wakey's team, who won the Cash Cup Extra, which we mentioned earlier. So I dropped Wakey and Kinzel. They did not make it through into round 4. They had an absolute As Levin would say, a howler of a day in the round 3, didn't make it through to round 4. We also saw a big upset of Camiseti and Teak not managing to make it. They just missed out. I think they placed 38th, so they just missed out on kind of qualifying through, which is tough to say because, like I said, they've been playing so well already throughout the season, and just to miss out qualification is really, really tough for them. But let's not try and dwindle on the people who did not qualify. What about the people who made it to round 4, and who has played the best? What's the leaderboard actually looking like? Remember, the top 3 qualify through in the FNCS, and the teams who have qualified in 3rd place, so the bottom was Jamside, Fury, and Dementos, and these guys really kind of came out of nowhere in this final game. You know, overall, their placements were middling, right? If I'm just looking through their stats, they placed 23rd, 6th, 13th, and 11th, so they weren't really in a kind of position to qualify. They were doing well, but they weren't anywhere in the top 3 before this tournament, and in their final game, they picked up a victory royale with 9 eliminations, and that pushed them over the threshold into top 3 to qualify them through. You know, we weren't even talking about them on the broadcast because I think they were 6th or 7th at that time and managed to push their way all the way up to 3rd with that big victory on the last game. So this is one of the reasons why I thought the format changes was so good for FNCS, because they brought really hype moments like this where things actually mattered in the qualifiers, right? That top 3 matters because you go straight to finals. So really, really cool. Jamside, Fury, and Dementos. In 2nd place, we have a controversial team of Bubak, Nebs, and Waze. Now, first thing I'm going to say about this team, people are saying these guys are cheating and soft aiming. Unless you have proof, please don't spread this any further. If you want to look at the clips and say, yes, I think that's bad, but I don't want to take away these guys' achievements at this moment before we actually have anyone showing real evidence of these guys cheating at all. So please, let's not spread any negativity about these guys. Let's at least hype these guys up. They've made it. They've qualified through to the finals. Fantastic. You know, they were doing really, really well pretty much through the entire tournament, so this was not really a surprise to us to see them there. First thing I want to say is please don't send any hate to Bubak's team, and one of the things I want to add also is that there was one team removed for macroing, and that was Trix. He was removed for using basically a crouch macro where he holds a button and he'll just crouch spam over and over again. He was not banned, he was just removed from the leaderboard, so he can play future weeks, but I think his team has dropped him because they're not okay with this. So props to his team for not being okay with someone not abiding by the rules. And in 1st place there was Blaster, Alpha, and Nikov as well, who came out of Craggy Cliffs. They've won last season in Qualifier 3. They won that qualifier as well, and then didn't manage to make it into finals. I think they came 21st in their heat in semifinals, so they did really well in qualifiers. Didn't do so well in their heats. I can't remember if that was because of the French internet going down or not, but it potentially was. We'll see. Either way, they didn't make it to finals, so again, they've won a qualifier this season, but this time they've managed to actually make it to the finals, so I'm sure they're going to be really, really happy with this result. So these are top 3 teams who've actually just made it straight through to the finals. Now, definitely a team I want to talk about and mention was Andalex's team, who's pretty much first most of the way through the tournament, but unfortunately in their last game, they did exactly the same as they did in the Cash Cup Extra, where they didn't really perform. You know, their average placement, first 4 games, 4th, 2nd, 1st, 5th. Incredible. And then they were contested off spawn in their 5th game and were eliminated early. And then they choked that final game coming 16th. So they keep not striking while the iron's hot, you know. If I think back to any FNCS finals, it's the same thing. When it came back to Season 4, they didn't manage to get enough points to win out against Mongrelstream. Now, they weren't at a disadvantage by any means, but they were in the race for running. Same with last season. You know, they didn't manage to clutch that top 3 in the final game. They ended up 4th after doing so well through the finals. In the Cash Cup Extra, they managed to not clutch this week to get that 1st place slot, and now this time they're in 5th, not managing to clutch the top 3. So a top team, absolutely no doubt, but they just seem to have a little bit of a curse on their final games. I don't know if it's a mentality issue or if maybe it's just purely coincidence. Like, we don't know. Either way, these guys are still placing incredibly well, just not managing to reach the thresholds that they need right now, and I'm sure these guys will qualify through in either Qualifier 2 or Qualifier 3 in the next 2 weeks. They are one of the best teams, undoubtedly, in our region right now. So my face cam's back up here again. Definitely want to talk about High Chris, Knight, and Vortex. Those guys played really, really good, and they were definitely in contention. So their match history was like really bad starting off, and they super clutched up. But yeah, again, kind of similar to Andalex's team, didn't do too much in that final game, which is a real shame. Savage, Indra, and Refsguard was a team that we kind of saw a lot of on stream because they kept having these really good potential moments, but really weren't able to like capitalize fully on these games. They're always playing kind of as a solo in the end game. ADN, Hardride, and oh my god, I can't say this team's name. Aiden, Astro and Hard Find. I've figured out a new nickname for these boys. Really big performance towards the end of the game. Like, I put these guys as my top 8. Actually, what were my predictions? Yeah, actually looking at my predictions, I put them exactly at 7th. So I did think these guys were going to do really, really well. And they indeed, they came 7th. They had some really, really good games. These guys have a huge potential. And again, this is a team I want to see in finals. They didn't make it last season. I want to see this team perform really well. Joe, Shadow, and Stompy didn't get to play their typical high ground playstyle, but without that, they still played really, really well. Kind of getting a lot of eliminations plus a good placement overall. So I kind of have high hopes for this team again. I think this is going to be a good team coming into finals. The Badonkeys doing good too. 4-0 Tayson and Nate. I saw Tayson on Twitter complaining about zones as well, potentially not going in his favor, but if you're complaining about zones on Twitter, the day's probably not gone your way generally. Outside of that as well, yeah, I mean, this isn't just a zone issue, let's put it that way. But I mean, these guys will do really well. We know they'll clutch up again. And one of the other fights that we really want to hype up and talk about was Benji Fishy versus Deceptos, landed in Pleasant Park. This fight didn't work out for either of these teams realistically. Like, the match history was just not good from any of these teams right now. If they won the fight, it didn't matter. Oh, I hit myself in the face. I'm wrestling with this thing, man. If they won the fight, it didn't really matter for either of these teams, so we'll see what the strategies change coming forward. Benji obviously tweeted that they won it off spawn, but they only placed 2 places higher, so hopefully we're going to see some better strategies from these two teams in the next coming weeks, and we'll see them to be able to qualify through, kind of play to their best. Hope you enjoyed this first week of the Reisshub recap. If you have anything else that you'd want me to include, any format changes you want me to put into this, let me know down below in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Peace.